Everybody's got some coffee, I hope, and Steve was generous. We're expecting our first, our son in about a couple weeks actually, and I told my wife I would grow out my high and tight. So this is my daddy do. This is my hippie hairstyle. So this is grown out as going to be for me. Yeah. I was in preparing. Saying goodbye to my wife, I said, is there any joke I can, use it as an icebreaker? And she looked at me and she said, please don't. So I don't have any jokes for you, but other than hopefully we can delve into HB House Bill 910, which has obviously been a hot topic for people here locally and across the state. Matter of fact, I think our legislature had a hearing yesterday up in Austin to discuss some more issues. And so a bit of a disclosure real quick before I even get started is we're going to discuss this as best we can. I'm going to try to provide a back history of where we were before House Bill 910 to where we are now, as much as can be explained, but also know that since this is a hot topic, you have some different competing legal analysis going on the topic, and I hope to address any questions, concerns we might have in the room today as best we can, but still know that the City of McAllen, McAllen Police Department, we are keeping track of these changes. We're monitoring them closely to provide the best service we can for the City of McAllen. Probably the best job I had was serving our country in the United States Marine Corps, but very, very close is serving the City of McAllen, where I was born and raised. And so just thank you for the privilege of being able to be here to present this presentation to you guys. Also, I'd like to thank Chief Rodriguez, who assisted in helping me prepare for this. Also, another Assistant City Attorney, Austin Stevenson, who is not here, also helped in the presentation. And I want to thank Steve, the Chamber, Mayor Darling, our City Manager, Roy Rodriguez, who have made this a priority. And just because we're here today doesn't mean we haven't been preparing for this even beforehand. So with that said, let's kind of dive in. Everybody ready? Okay. Just a real quick, a show of hands. Who here is a business owner concerned about what they can or cannot do as it pertains to open carry? Raise hands. Okay, a few. Just residents who are concerned about the changes, who just kind of want to be educated. Okay, good, good. McAllen's always had an active civic community, so thank you for being here. So some of our discussion items today will be, like I said, a history, and I also wanted to make a point and clarify long guns versus handguns. Long guns being any kind of shotgun, what you see AR-15s, or which is like kind of like your military-looking type of rifles. So rifle shotguns, we'll talk about activity with carry issues prior to House Bill 910, and then our changes for open carry. We'll talk about open carry limited, prohibited in certain places, and concerns, which is I think the reason why we're all here, concerns for McAllen residents and business owners. Also some frequently asked questions that I've kind of gathered from the discussion points across the state that I think most people here will want to learn or know about. And then after the frequently asked questions, if there are any other additional questions, we'll take those at that time. And I may lean on Chief Rodriguez to help me out at that point as well. So real quick, because I'll be referring to LTCs. One of the changes now, because it's both concealed and open carry, is that it's no longer going to be a concealed handgun license because it only applies to the concealed carry. So now they're referring to the permit or the license as a license to carry, or your LTC. So if I refer to CHL, LTC throughout the presentation, they're going to be one and the same now. So what do you need to have to obtain one of these permits, an LTC? And there are 8 requirements. And so the first one being you need to be 21 years old. There's an exception for members and former members of the armed forces. You must be 18. You have to have a clean criminal history, including military service and recent juvenile records. Number 3, you can't be under a protective order, and you can't be chemically dependent. Number 5, it's a double negative, but you can't be of unsound mind, right? Not be delinquent in paying fines, fees, child support. I think child support's the one you see the most of being an issue. And be eligible to purchase a handgun by completing a NICS check and complete required training. I'm going to go over the required training here in a second. The reason why I'm going over this is because I think for those who aren't familiar, for some of us, this may just be common knowledge because, you know, either we're familiar with guns, we have friends who have guns, and we know the process, but I just wanted to cover everybody's background, and so those who don't know the requirements of getting an LTC, that we identify those today. So we're talking about additional training. In addition, individuals are still required to complete a certified training course, and this both has a written exam component and a practical component. And for somebody from a military background, I kind of, you know, prefer not the written part. You know, I've taken enough exams in law school. I just want to go out and, you know, show people that, you know, show that I have the capabilities and skill set to know how to operate a weapon. But you have to have passed both to acquire that permit. You have to get a 70% in both the written and the practical application, and you have to do that with a Texas DPS qualified instructor. So now we have kind of the background of getting a permit. How are things before House Bill 910? Prior to House Bill 910, CHL holders were required to keep handguns concealed from view, and in that, you know, those who may or may not have been familiar with the training of concealed handgun, there was also a thing called imprinting. And so even though you had a CHL, you couldn't, the principle behind it was you couldn't tell if somebody had a handgun on them. Okay, that was the whole purpose behind concealed handgun carry. And so the theory was you couldn't even imprint. So if I was wearing a, maybe back when I was in better shape and I had one of those tight shirts, but I had concealed carry, of course, if I had that tight shirt tucked in, you could, of course, maybe sometimes see the imprinting of the handgun, and so you couldn't do that either. And also, prior to 910, for concealed carry, there were still businesses that could prohibit concealed carry with the proper signage. One thing that House Bill 910 has, it's expanded or made more specific the requirements for posting for a business that wants to prohibit carrying in their businesses. And we'll cover that in a little bit. So here's the meat and potatoes for those who raise their hands that they're business owners and they want to know the changes for private businesses. Just like with the CHL, those businesses posting proper signage under Texas Penal Code 3006 may prohibit carrying of a handgun, even if an individual has a valid license to carry permit. And so in here, it does list 3006, and just for a reference, and you guys can go back to it later, the references that I'll be bringing up here are in the Texas Penal Code, and they're the 3006, which is a concealed carry regulation. And now the new, because of the House Bill 910, the new enacted statute, which is 3007, and that's for the open carry. Now I'm also going to be talking about another statute in the Penal Code, which is 4603 and 4603-5. And those are your prohibited carries and the unlawful carrying by a CHL or LTC holder. But in here, it clearly states private businesses have the authority to post signage notifying their patrons that they're taking a stance against concealed or open carry. That's a right that the private business owners have. And the whole purpose behind posting the notice is that if in fact there is a scenario where a patron comes in, okay, let me take a step back. If the private business posts the notice, and we'll go over the requirements of the notice in a little bit, but the business posts the notice, and a patron comes in carrying open carry, then that's in violation of that store's policies and the notice that they've posted. At that point, and we'll discuss some more later, the business owner can approach the individual and say, hey, it's the store's policy and there's a sign outside that says, we don't allow our patrons to carry. Can you please, step outside, either put your weapon in your vehicle or return at some later time without your weapon. In the scenario that the patron does not want to leave, and in the scenario that a police officer is called out, this notice, the 3006 notice and 3007 notice, helps the officer to establish one of those elements in that the patron was given proper notice. And so what H. Bill 910 tries to do is establish what proper notice is, and we'll get into the specifics of those in a little bit. But that's the reason for posting the notice at your businesses. I'm going to go a little bit into, for just those non-business owners, just individuals here who want to know more about open carry and concealed carry. There's prohibited carry in public buildings as established under federal state law and case law. Governmental entities were previously and continue to be restricted from unilaterally, and that's the key point, unilaterally prohibiting the carry of firearms. Just recently at the last City Commission meeting, the City of McAllen passed a resolution to say that they will be posting, as allowed by state law, will be posting a no open carry or concealed carry at all of its public meetings that are governed by the Texas Open Meetings Act. And so when you go up to the City Commission chambers during the City Commission meeting, you will see these very tall and square notices that prohibit that, and it'll say they prohibit both the open carry and concealed carry. Now, just a point of clarification, it's not limited to the City Commission meetings. This is any meeting governed by the Texas Open Meetings Act. And in that, we could have a City Commission meeting that may not take place at the McAllen Chamber, but may take place at the airport, one of the airport offices or one of the community center offices. Wherever the meeting is held, that's where the city has said, we're going to post notice that anybody entering that meeting is not allowed to open or concealed carry. And that resolution was just passed. Those two resolutions, both for 3006 and 3007, were passed at the previous City Commission meeting. Other places where where carry is prohibited are school and educational institutions, and that's something that I'm not going to go into right now because there are some changes that are going to be coming up in August of this year, and then again in 2017 that are really fact-specific to the type of educational institution. Polling places, strictly prohibited. Government, courts, secured areas of the airport, and like we talked about, anywhere that there's where there's an open meeting being conducted at the option of the governmental entity. Everybody with me? That was a lot of stuff, and if I'm going too fast, please, there are going to be questions later, but if I'm going too fast through something in here, please raise your hand, and I'll try to accommodate that, okay? Okay, so the new changes, effective January 1st, 2016, it doesn't just apply to concealed carry. Now, the state authorized a license to carry to open carry. We did talk about the changes about the terms concealed handgun license to license to carry, the LTC. That just being because now you have both the right to open and concealed carry. The option is with a permit holder, which he wants to do. He can either conceal or open carry. The same requirements in obtaining the permits are applied to both. Let's see here. Those who open carry must ensure that handguns are always, and this is the key, this is a key point. If you carry a handgun, it must be secured in a belt or shoulder holster. Otherwise, it's in violation. It still is. You can't. Yes, ma'am.
What about women in their purses?
Okay, that would be a concealed carry. Okay. Again, I do have some frequently asked questions, and I think that was one of them, but we'll get to a lot of those questions in a little bit. But this refers to if you're going to be open carry now, all right? So if you're going to open carry, if I didn't have my coat on, I would have to have it holstered here on my belt, or you've seen those shoulder holsters as well, and they have to be secured in there. Again, it's saying you can't be waving a handgun out like that. Just in a second, sir. Should I call the police? Now, everybody again who's not a business owner, raise your hand. Keep your hands up. Business owners, keep your hands, raise your hands. Anybody else, raise your hands. Okay, this is getting down to the meat and potatoes now, right? So we've covered the history, we've covered kind of the technical aspects, but what do we do, right? LTC holders will lawfully start carrying guns and have been since January 1st. So when do we call the police department? Again, we talked about one specifically. If we're dealing with handguns, we're talking about handguns because we discussed early on, long guns have been allowed if they've been shoulder carried in a sling in a non-threatening manner. But now we're talking about handguns, okay? We are talking about handguns, and so if you're waving around a handgun, if you have a handgun in your hand, that's still a violation. That's not permitted, and so you would want to call the police in that sense. Well, first of all, you want to maybe look for safety first, and then call the police. Also, if you see even if you see a person who has a holstered handgun, but that is intoxicated, you want to call the police department. When a gun holder is committing another crime, maybe you see some kind of domestic dispute going on out in the public, and one of the parties has a holstered gun, even though it's not unholstered. As a concerned citizen, you see an ongoing dispute, you would report it the same way. You report crimes the same way, and especially you're going to be aware of it because you see them with a holstered gun. Contact the police department. And also, and in this last one, I'm gonna suggest just using your safety sense and common sense. Okay, when a gun holder is acting in a reckless or suspicious manner, we're all here. We're all concerned for our safety, for our fellow community members' safety, and so in using common sense and safety sense, and you see that or you suspect that something bad is about to happen, definitely call the police department. Now, if you have any other questions about the laws, the city attorney's office is not, obviously represents the city in all legal matters. We're not really in the business of providing legal advice. But if you want to know where to look for certain things, certain provisions, if you want to know, hey, should I call the police department based on the situation, you really don't know, still call somebody. And so that's why I'm leaving this number up here, the 681-1000 number. If you just don't know, okay, if we talked about these scenarios and you still don't know, should I call the police department, just call the city, okay? We want to make sure that our community remains safe. We don't want to discourage anybody from calling the police department. At the same time, we understand that the police department has a lot of work to do. And so definitely if there's an emergency situation like those that we've discussed, call the police department. If you just have questions, what should I do? Call the 681-1000 number. Now to our frequently asked questions. Let's go with the first one. What are the major changes from the current law to open carry? Essentially, individuals that possess a concealed handgun license, or LTC, beginning January 1st, are permitted to open carry a handgun in a belt or shoulder holster. That's the main change. Open carry is still prohibited in the same places concealed carry was prohibited before. Can I lawfully carry a handgun in Texas? Yes, again, January 1st, you can carry a handgun openly or concealed in many places as long as you possess a CHL or LTC issued by Texas or a similar license issued by a state with reciprocity. I don't know which states Texas has reciprocity with. My understanding is pretty broad, but that's something that I think the Texas DPS website has some kind of links to that, so you can check that as well. By law, the handgun must be carried in the shoulder belt holster. You do not need, again, CHL or LTC to carry a long arm. We're talking about rifles and shotguns. Can I open carry on private property? Yes, provided that the property does not display a sign described in 3006, 3007. At each of its entrances, a business wanting to completely ban handguns must post both signs. And so now we're talking about specifics of the signage. So proper notice, giving proper notice, you would want to pay attention to this for my business owners. A business wanting to completely ban handguns must post signs both in English and Spanish. English and Spanish, it must quote the specific language in 3006 and 3007 respectively for concealed and open carry. It must be 1-inch block length height, and that's the reason why the city hall's notice sign is pretty big. Failure to leave the property when requested to do so could result in you being charged with a criminal trespass. That's the teeth on it. So that's the consequence of not leaving is any patron that doesn't want to leave. That's when, like I said, that scenario where the police department is finally called and the patron still doesn't want to leave, the charge at that point would be a criminal trespass. Okay, so the next bullet point here is just quoting the language that needs to be cited. Again, you can find that under the Texas Penal Code 3006. It has to be specifically cited with that language. Can they carry a handgun in a vehicle? Yes, as long as the handgun is in the shoulder or belt holster and you have your permit, you can open carry in a vehicle. If you do not have a CHL or a license to carry, you may conceal carry in a vehicle, watercraft, or directly en route to a vehicle or watercraft that is under your control. Now, I'm gonna issue a disclaimer in here, in that this is very fact specific. It's contingent upon multiple factors, and although this is up here, it's not a blanket statement, okay? I would actually recommend consulting with the Texas Department DPS website for guidance on this. Again, this is a very hot topic, open carry. You have a differing analysis on the law. And so this is one of those areas that, although the statement may be true, you need to be very, very careful in relying on this because of the fact that these situations are so fact specific, okay? Can my openly carried firearm be loaded? Yes, the law doesn't make a distinction between that. If I live out of the state, can I open carry in Texas? Again, that's our reciprocity question. I already have a CHO where I need to get another license for open carry? No. Again, those are the same requirements. There will be a merger eventually. There will be no more concealed handgun license. They'll just now be LTCs, license to carries. I heard there is additional training for open carry. Do I need to retake the class? Again, no new training is needed. Do I give up my right to open carry if I obtain a concealed handgun permit? No. Again, just kind of saying it different ways. If you have a CHL, it's going to merge into the LTC. Okay, can I prohibit persons from openly or concealed carrying in my business is for my business owners by displaying signs in sections 3006 and 3007 of the Texas Penal Code? Yes, but the signs must be posted, must include the exact language prescribed in that statute. So again, the reference is Texas Penal Code 3006 and 3007. You put that exact language in 1 inch font in both English and Spanish, and that should suffice as proper notice. If I'm asked to leave a store for openly carrying a weapon, can I cover up the gun and go back in the store if I have a CHL or LTC? Yes, unless the store owner or manager asks you not to return, in which case returning would constitute trespass. I'm gonna qualify that statement again, in that the scenario and the answer go back on the premise of CHL before, in which there was no imprinting. You didn't know they were having it, so how would the business owner know that you had it? Again, this is a very difficult issue. There's a lot of discussion back and forth between lawmakers and the courts, AG, Texas Municipal League. But under this scenario, this specific scenario, that would be okay. Does a person have a right to view a CHL or LTC of another person? As a private individual, business owner, you can ask, but if the holder of the permit says no, then he says no. Now, if it's a police officer or magistrate, that's a different story. Am I required to show an identification document ID with a photo issued by a government entity if I'm stopped for open carry? Yes, when obtaining your CHL LTC, you agree to provide your CHL LTC and ID when asked by a police officer. There's a short reference there to the Texas Government Code 411-205. In addition, it's a violation of 4602 of the Texas Penal Code to carry a handgun unless you possess a CHL LTC. Would the mere carrying of a weapon, of an open weapon, violate section 4201 if another person says he is alarmed or afraid? Again, very, very fact specific. This is a simple scenario. This is a simple answer. Most cases are going to be more complicated and involve more factors. But in here, no, as long as the handgun is in the holster as required by law. Again, this is not to discourage you from reporting such, but just, I'm just trying to cover all questions and scenarios that you guys might have. Can a police officer question or disarm me if I'm openly carrying a holstered handgun in public? Yes. State law gives a police officer more authority to disarm a license holder who is carrying a handgun than it does for a non-licensed long gun carrier if the license holder is carrying a handgun on or about the license holder's person when a police officer demands the license holder display identification. The license holder must display both the license holder's driver's license or certificate or the holder's license, a handgun license. Moreover, a police officer may disarm a license holder at any time the officer reasonably believes it is necessary for the protection of the license holder, the officer, or other individual. The peace officer will return the handgun to the license holder before allowing the license holder to leave the scene if the officer determines that the license holder is not a threat to any person and if the license holder has not violated any law that results in an arrest. Again, very fact-specific. Chief Rodriguez and his police force have a very, it's a difficult job policing the community, okay? And so they still have the authority that if they reasonably believe that it's necessary for the protection of the license holder, the officer, or for our community, that they can act in such a way.